So Friday, we wrap up the show. And then it was announced a little bit later that Sheldon Rankins had been let go by the Cincinnati Bengals. And although that made its rounds as a headline and a talking point, I don't think anyone was surprised by that. Was with all the weird stuff that happened for the Bengals in 2024, was that the weirdest one as far as how it was handled, how it was covered? Do we even know what actually was going on? Like, what happened with Sheldon Rankins? Because it was a good offseason addition. I know people say, oh, the Bengals screwed up with that. I don't think they screwed up. The intent was to go get a good replacement for DJ Reader, and I thought that they did that. Sheldon Rankins was a great replacement for DJ Reader. It just didn't lead to great things on the field. He was an out there, and there was just a lot of, not secrecy, but there was just no transparency whatsoever with what exactly was going on there. Is that one of the weirder things from the 2024 season, the Sheldon Rankins saga, if you will? It's not a surprise that he's cut. I feel like there's a lot of there's just not a lot known exactly what the hell happened there with him throughout his tenure throughout his season, in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think Sheldon Rankins goes into a very, very exclusive list with Trey Waynes, and I don't know if I'm forgetting anyone else, but major Bengals free agency signings that just didn't work out even in the slightest. Only played 7 games, but that didn't stop Ian Rappaport from labeling him as a crucial starter for the Bengals this last season.
I saw that.
Obviously, they're moving on from him now, saving, I think it was right about $6 million, which makes it a no-brainer move for a guy that couldn't play all year because of viral meningitis. So, yeah, this was a no-brainer. The questions really started coming when the Bengals signed Sheldon Rankins, and you said it right there, and it's where my main gripe with this came from originally. They signed Sheldon Rankins to replace DJ Reader. While they both play D tackle, they don't play the same position. DJ Reader's a 340-pound nose tackle run stopper. Sheldon Rankins, a 300-pound 3 tech who rushes the passer. So they tried to fill a crucial hole in Lou Anarumo's defense with a guy that doesn't even play the position. So I think this is a move that was doomed to fail from the beginning, and we saw that in the few games he did play. He didn't make a difference in those 7 games he played. He wasn't an impact player for this team, and the Bengals move on from him much earlier than they usually start their cuts, which I thought was interesting to note. They want to get this money on the books as soon as possible. They might have something in the works, who knows, that they need to spend it on, but definitely early to get the ball rolling, at least in terms of Bengals off seasons in the past and the timeline they usually operate on. But Sheldon Rankins a no-brainer. Not the only no-brainer cut this offseason. There should be a few more, including Hubbard, Kappa, Pratt, and Zach Moss.
Sheldon Rankins, man, he'll go down as one of the more relevant Bengals in the history of the franchise. The fact that we brought him in and he contributed literally zero, it's hard to do. And, if you want to say whatever illness it was, that's fine.
Viral meningitis.
Yeah. I would say that a lot of that, now this is an allegation, but I'd argue maybe some of it potentially wasn't because he was sick, right? I think there might have been something else going on there that wasn't illness related. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, more power to him, I guess. But it was a failure from the jump. He did not do what the Bengals thought he was able to do, and now you have to sit on your hands. You do get to cut him now, so that's good. You get some money. But, yeah, I mean, in terms of disappointment last year, Kinner, you asked at the beginning of this segment, probably one of the more disappointing names for sure, given the fact that he legit stopped playing football at some point during the season.
Yeah, and then so obviously one of many players that you guys had anticipated them cutting. Geno Stone was another one that we thought would potentially be cut. It doesn't sound like that's the case now. Are there some names that you thought were going to be cut that could be surprises? And by the way, maybe Stone still could be, but there was some stuff indicating that maybe he wouldn't. You brought up a couple of the names that you do still expect to be cut. Are there any surprise names that you expect to be cut that possibly won't be, if that makes sense in that regards too? Because we're anticipating some of these names to be let go. Will they?
Let go, I'm not as confident in Sam Hubbard as I have been. I think as a pure cut, I'm starting to wane on that a little bit. Now, there's a 0% chance he's back on his contract. There's no way they just run it back with the last year on this contract. It's not going to happen. They will either cut him and re-sign him or restructure it. I don't know which route they will go, but I'm starting to think there's a chance Sam Hubbard is back on the Bengals next year, and it's just with the firing of Lou Anarumo, the change at obviously defensive defensive coordinator with Al Golden and Jermaine Pratt requesting a trade now. I talked about it on Chatterbox Bengals when we were talking about Sheldon Rankins, but that's a lot of defensive leadership turnover to give away in one offseason. And I know we're changing schemes, but there's a lot of young guys on that team that need some veterans somewhere in this defense. And if Sam Hubbard's willing to take a pretty significant pay cut to come back, understand his role as not an every down edge rusher, move inside a little bit, be a versatile player for this defense as a backup off the bench, I think I could see Sam Hubbard coming back on a reworked deal. But the other guys we talked about as guaranteed cuts, Kappa, Pratt, who obviously could be traded instead, but definitely won't be on the Bengals next year, and Zach Moss, I think those guys are layups, no questions asked, will not be staying.
Geno Stone's a guy that I think a lot of fans thought would be gone. I don't know if it's a bad thing that Geno Stone, is still here. I think you have to replace so many defensive players right now. I think a guy like Geno Stone has the ability to be a solid contributor to the Bengals, right? I think there is something in him. Sheldon Rankins couldn't contribute. I think Geno Stone can contribute to the secondary of the Bengals. Hopefully, at least from what we've seen in years past, he can be that guy, and I think he was starting to get better towards the end. So I'm not shocked that he's going to be, at least he probably will be, a Bengal heading into next year. You can't replace, I know we say you have to replace everybody. You can't actually replace everybody. There has to be some returning talent on the defensive side of the football. So I'm not upset that Geno Stone's back. In terms of the other cuts, Sam Hubbard is a fan favorite. I don't know if you had to rank jersey sales for the Bengals. He's certainly top 5, top 6, top 7.
If you divide jersey sales by on-field output, he's distantly number one.
McPherson's getting up there now,
That's true.
So, I think that there's going to be a couple more cuts. You're going to start to see the defense get reworked here in the coming months. So it's gonna take a little time, and meanwhile, this is all happening, and you have to re-sign or at least bring back, the three biggest players, arguably behind Joe Burrow. So it's going to be a very busy offseason, and as we've said, I want to say 400 times, it's probably the most important offseason we've had since Joe Burrow signed with the Cincinnati Bengals or was drafted.
No question about it. After the cut of Rankins and including the draft pool and the practice squad, it has the Bengals out to roughly $53.25 million in cap space, $53.24 million in cap space, with about $104 million in cash spending for the rest of their roster to get up to the numbers they usually have. So there's a lot of wiggle room there, and obviously more and more of that, the more cuts we see. The Tee Higgins franchise tag deadline is March 4th. It is coming up, so we'll see some more stuff about all of that as we near through the end of this week.
So, and I agree with when you brought up they can't cut everybody. They can't just move on from every veteran player that's on there. I mean, obviously they have a lot of holes to fill, but they are going to have a lot of cap space now, and that number is only going to continue to get bigger. So where's that money going to go? And I know everyone will say, well, obviously T and Jamar and all that. I mean, a lot of those contracts, some of those are going to get signing, but like if they do extend T, a signing bonus is going to be issued up front. So that's not going to like a signing bonus for him, a signing bonus, obviously for Jamar Chase. Hendrickson, you would have to, account for him. That side, like, where's all this money going to go? I know we've talked about this in the past. Tom Brenneman has brought up on his show that he's not a fan of when the Cincinnati Bengals, if they have like, let's say $60 million in cap space, but they take, 35 or 40 of it into the season. It's like, well, why are you not spending all of it? Why are you not exhausting every resource of yours to improve a roster? This team went 9-8 last year. They missed the playoffs. And it sounds like maybe there's some names they're kicking the tires on possibly bringing back next year, despite the deficiencies from last year. If you're not going to use all of that money to upgrade at major key positions, is this going to be a situation where they're rolling over a lot of money into next season? They're freeing up a lot of cap space, but what are they going to do with it is the question that I have when it's all said and done. Because Al Golden brought over to go young on defense, to develop, and maybe there's some guys that are on the roster that haven't been good yet that they want to give time for Al Golden to develop on that side of the ball. How much money do you anticipate them spending? Not how much money do you anticipate them freeing up, but how much of that do you think that they're actually going to spend? Because that's where I'm curious. How aggressive do you think that they're going to be once they've taken care of T, once they've taken care of Jamar, Trey Hendrickson? They're going to have, hit the draft hard, of course. They're going to give guys a chance to come back and see what they could do under Al Golden on the defensive side. Where's this money going to go, do you think?
Are they going to use the full $53.24 million in cap space? No, I don't think so. I think they're definitely going to have some leftover cap space as we get into week one. The question comes into how much cash are they going to spend, and they could have $20 million left in cap space and spend $150 million in cash. It all comes down to how they structure the contracts. And the reason why we're talking about being able to let a guy like Sheldon Rankins, who played so poorly, walk after one season, cutting him after one season, saving all that money, is because of the way the Bengals structure contracts. Now, is that a bad thing when you talk to Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins? Absolutely. But with those mid-level signings that the Bengals are going to make outside of those stars in free agency, they're not going to guarantee a lot of money. That's not going to have a lot of effect on the cap. They're going to do these pseudo one-year deals and 2- and 3-year sets where they can cut guys for minimal losses after the first or second year if it doesn't work out. That's just the way the Bengals operate. So the thing I'm focused more on now is where that cash number gets to. It's up over 100 after the Sheldon Rankins cut. It's got to get to about 125 to have some real significant confidence in bringing all three guys back, as well as making some significant improvements to the team. The cap number could be the exact same if they don't guarantee any money. So I'm not nearly as focused on what they have in cap as much as I'm focused on they have to spend more cash this offseason than they have in years past, because that's just what it requires.
Yep, they're top 10 in total cap space that's available. That number will only continue to get bigger, possibly with some future cuts coming. But they are also ranked near the bottom as far as their dead cap. Like they're not being penalized this year. There's not a lot of contracts that are working against them. So I think that's that from that perception. That's why they also get criticized so much, is because like you're not operating uphill the way you're pretending to be. Like there's not a lot of roadblocks in their way, but it feels like it. Like I feel like this is a team that's just strapped for cash, and they're not. This is a team that has the highest paid quarterback in the league, about to have the highest paid wide receiver in the league, and it still is not going to impact them the way that we have been conditioned to feel and think about this team, and that's why people are losing patience with them. That's the thing. Like it's one thing if your team has spent a ton of money and they don't have a lot of money to spend. They haven't spent hardly any money. They're 28th in the debt as far as the dead cap and how that impacts their salary cap. They don't have an excuse. I'm very fascinated to see what they do, because so many people make a big deal about the money they have available to them. Yeah. I just don't think it's going to match the expectations that people have for what they're going to do this offseason.
Yeah, we heard it a couple weeks ago when Joe Burrow was on his media tour. He said, do what the Eagles do. They pay everyone. The Eagles have Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Landon Dickerson, Lane Johnson, Devontae Smith, Jordan Mailata, and Dallas Goedert over $50 million contracts. The Bengals have Joe Burrow and Orlando Brown. The fallacy that they don't have money to spend it's completely a lie. They have everything that they want to do. They're capable of doing everything we want them to do. So get with the times, pay your stars what they're worth, structure the contract so it's doable with the cap space. It's really not that hard.
All right, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Before we move away from the Bengals, Casey, anything to jump in on when it comes to the Bengals and their cap space situation right now? Again, Sheldon Rankins, it wasn't a surprise that they let him go, but ultimately the money it frees up and, again, just continues to add to the narrative of the anticipated activity that they're going to have this offseason.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate some of the same points Jacob already brought up. I am getting a little nervous about the Sam Hubbard situation. I do think like losing all your captains does have some sort of weight bearing on them right now, and the fact that you bring in Al Golden, who knows Sam Hubbard, I don't know. Maybe they feel like maybe they should keep him around. I hope they restructure the deal somehow. But as time goes on and less of these cuts don't happen, the more I'm going to start worrying. The other thing, too, in that list is Alex Kappa. I mean, he doesn't deserve the contract that he's got right now. He was the triple crown sack pressures and something else. He doesn't deserve that contract either, but the more time passes, the more I get worried about this. Bengals need to get with the times. Just like Jacob said, they are capable of structuring deals that involve risk in their future, and that's just something that they haven't been willing to do in the past. They've done it with their best players like A.J. Green and Geno Atkins, and you can even point to like Carlos Dunlap, but they have never jeopardized their potential future. And what the Eagles are doing is really smart too. A lot of those deals, their mega huge cap hits are in 2030 when the CBA gets to be renegotiated, when they get more money from these TV deals. Every year they're breaking more and more records, more and more viewership. So you know that cap number is just going to go up, and it's going to go up exponentially. The Bengals can do something similar. They don't have to go all in like the Eagles do, but they can definitely go semi-in on that route and do some of the bigger contracts like Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins in similar light. And you don't have to completely go all in on like the 2030 year or whatever. But those are my thoughts on the team at the moment. All we're asking for is them to become a little more modernized. They have been a Stone Age franchise for years. They kind of made a couple good steps in the right direction over the last few years in the Joe Burrow era. Let's take that final step. Let's go off the deep end together.
Eagles have 7 $50 million contracts, as I just said, and if the Bengals do what we're asking them to do this offseason, they would have 4 or 5. So we aren't even asking them to go all the way to where the Eagles are. We're just asking them to dip their toe in being a competitor, which doesn't seem like that much to ask when you already have Joe Burrow playing quarterback.
One more thing to consider as well, it came out last week as well, and I don't even know if we touched on it or not. The salary cap was announced for the next 2 seasons. It was like $25 million higher than what many people were anticipating, which covers a nice little chunk of Tee Higgins' contract if they decided to. I mean,
if you would have given Jamar what he asked for last year, it would have been a crazy discount deal. Yeah.